Damage. They stay because somewhere along the way they learned that you would tolerate it. And here's the hard part. We don't teach people how to treat us with our words. We teach them with what we allow. So what is the one thing you do? You stop explaining yourself. You stop overjustifying your boundaries. You stop trying to be understood by people who are committed to misunderstanding you. Because here's what happens when you explain too much. You turn your boundary into a debate. You invite negotiation where there should be clarity. Healthy people hear a boundary and adjust. Toxic people hear a boundary and test it. They push, they guilt, they question your character for choosing yourself. And when you finally stop explaining, when your no becomes calm, steady, and final, something powerful shifts. Not everyone will like it. Everyone will like it. Some will call you cold. Some will say you've changed. But what they really mean is you no longer give them access to the version of you that was easy to cross. This is where courage lies. Not in shouting, not in proving, not in winning arguments, but in quiet consistency. You don't need to announce your growth. You don't need closure from people who benefited from your silence. You don't need validation for choosing peace. You just decide. Decide that your energy is sacred. Decide that your boundaries don't require applause. Decide that walking away is sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself. And when you do this once, truly and fully, toxic people don't chase you anymore. Not because you fought them, but because they can no longer reach you. That's not avoidance. That's self-respect. From a young age, many of us learned that being good meant being the hidden pattern you never noticed understandable, agreeable, and available. We learned that saying no should come with reasons, that choosing ourselves should come with apologies, that if someone is hurt by our boundary, it must mean we did something wrong. Over time, explaining ourselves became a survival skill. We explained to avoid conflict. We explained to keep the peace. We explained because we were afraid of being seen as selfish, difficult, or unkind. But here's the truth that changes everything. Healthy relationships do not require constant justification. Only unsafe ones do. When you explain your boundaries, what you're often really doing is asking for permission. You're hoping the other person will approve of your limits, validate your feelings, or reassure you that you're still a good person for having needs. And toxic people sense this immediately. They don't hear your explanation as information. They hear it as an opening. An opening to argue, an opening to negotiate, an opening to make you doubt yourself. Because explanations invite discussion, invites control. A boundary is not a debate. It is a statement of self-respect. And have self-respect. The moment you feel compelled to over-explain, pause and ask yourself, am I trying to be clear or am I trying to be accepted? Those are very different things. Toxic people rely on your need to be understood. They rely on your empathy, your self-doubt, your fear of being misunderstood. They push back not because your boundary is unreasonable, but because it disrupts the access they once had to you. And when you explain, they learn where to press. They learn which emotions to trigger. They learn how to pull you back into the same exhausting cycle. This is why no amount of perfect wording ever seems enough. You can explain calmly, kindly, logically, and with compassion, and it will still not land. Not because you failed, but because the goal was never understanding. The goal was control. There is a moment, usually quiet and deeply uncomfortable, when you realize this. When you realize that continuing to explain is costing you more than the relationship is worth. When you feel the exhaustion settle into your body, when you notice how small you've made yourself trying to keep someone else comfortable, that moment is an invitation. An invitation to choose clarity over why ignoring toxic people doesn't work approval. When you stop explaining, something inside you trembles at first. There's fear of being judged, fear of being talked about, fear of being labeled cold, selfish, or changed. And maybe you have changed. Maybe you've grown tired of abandoning yourself just to be liked. Not explaining doesn't mean you become harsh or unkind. It means your no is clean. It means your yes is honest. It means you stop handing people the emotional instruction manual to manipulate you. A simple boundary sounds like this. I'm not available for that. This doesn't work for me. I've decided to step back. No long stories. No defending your character. No rehearsing your pain to make it palatable. And here's the surprising part. People who respect you won't demand more. They may feel disappointed, but they won't punish you for having limits. They won't interrogate you. They won't need your suffering explained in detail to honor your choice. The ones who react with anger, guilt tripping, or emotional withdrawal reveal something important. Not about you, but about the role you were playing in their life, a role that benefited them more than it protected you. When you stop explaining, you stop participating in emotional negotiations that drain you. You reclaim time, energy, and dignity. So you learn to tolerate the discomfort of being misunderstood because you finally understand yourself. And that's the shift toxic people cannot survive. They thrive in chaos, confusion, and emotional access. They fade in the presence of calm, certainty. When your boundary is no longer wrapped in fear, they lose interest. Not because you became unloving, but because you became unreachable. This is not about building walls. It's about building clarity. You don't owe anyone a version of yourself that hurts you. You don't owe endless explanations for choosing peace. You don't owe comfort to people who were comfortable crossing you. The most powerful boundary you will ever set is the one you stop explaining. And once you do, not loudly, not dramatically, but consistently, something changes. You feel steadier, quieter, stronger, and slowly, almost imperceptibly, the noise fades, not because you fought back, but because you finally chose yourself. We were taught to chase comfort, to smooth things over, to avoid tension at all the psychology behind toxic behavior costs. We learned that a good life meant a peaceful life, and a peaceful life meant keeping everyone calm, happy, and unchallenged. When discomfort shows up, tight in the chest, heavy in the stomach, loud in the mind, we assume something has gone wrong. We assume we should fix it, remove it, apologize it away. But discomfort isn't always a warning sign. Sometimes it's a receipt that proves you chose yourself when it would have been easier to stay silent. Self-respect rarely feels good in the moment. It feels awkward. It feels lonely. It feels like standing still while everyone else keeps moving and judging and misunderstanding. It feels like saying no and then sitting with the quiet afterward, resisting the urge to chase approval just to make the discomfort stop. That urge is powerful because discomfort threatens an old survival pattern, the belief that being liked is the same as being safe. So when you set a boundary or tell the truth or step back from someone who drains you, your body reacts, your heart races. Your mind replays the conversation 100 times. You wonder if you were too harsh, too sensitive, too much. You imagine how the other person might be talking about you. And in that moment, going back, explaining, apologizing, shrinking feels like relief. But relief is not the same as peace. Relief is temporary. It soothes the discomfort by abandoning yourself. Peace is slower, quieter. It asks you to stay with the discomfort without fixing it, to stay with the feeling of being misunderstood, to stay with the reality that not everyone will approve of the version of you that has limits. Self-respect demands this kind of staying. It asks you to tolerate the pause between who you used to be and who you are becoming. That pause is uncomfortable because it's unfamiliar. The old version of you knew the rules over-give, over-explain, over-function. The new version is still learning how to exist without earning worth through sacrifice. And learning anything new comes with friction. Discomfort shows up when you stop answering messages right away, when you don't laugh at jokes that cross your values, when you don't fix someone else's emotions for them, when you let silence sit instead of rushing in to repair it. Each time, discomfort whispers the same lie. If you don't act, you'll lose something, and sometimes you do. You might lose access to people who only valued you when you were convenient. One mistake that gives them power warning might lose the illusion of harmony that was built on yourself. Betrayal. You might lose the version of yourself who believed love had to hurt to be real. But what you gain is something far more stable. You gain alignment between what you feel and what you do, between what you need and what you allow, between your inner voice and your outer behavior. That alignment feels uncomfortable at first because it's honest. And honesty disrupts patterns that depended on you staying quiet. People may react. Some will push back harder when they sense you pulling away. Others will test you, hoping this discomfort will make you fold. This is where self-respect becomes a practice, not a one-time decision. You don't measure your growth by how calm everyone else is. You measure it by how often you can sit with discomfort without abandoning yourself. Discomfort is not a sign you're doing something wrong. It's often a sign you're doing something different. And different feels threatening to systems, families, friendships. dynamics that relied on you being predictable. Here's what no one tells you: the discomfort lessons. Not because people suddenly approve, but because your nervous system learns that you are safe even when others are unhappy with you. You learn that rejection doesn't equal danger. That disappointment doesn't equal failure. That conflict doesn't equal catastrophe. You build a quiet confidence that doesn't come from winning arguments or being admired, but from knowing you can survive the discomfort of being true to yourself. And once you know that, everything changes. You stop rushing to explain. You stop chasing closure. You stop confusing anxiety with intuition. You begin to trust the steadiness that comes after the discomfort passes. Self-respect is not loud. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't need to prove anything. It's felt in the way you no longer panic when someone is displeased, in the way you choose long-term peace over short-term comfort, in the way you allow discomfort to exist without letting it dictate your decisions. Because the truth is simple and hard. The life that honors you will cost you some comfort, and the life that costs you self-respect will cost you far more. For many people, silence feels like failure. It feels like weakness, avoidance, or loss of control. We're the one thing you must do. Core lesson taught that if something feels wrong, we should explain it. If someone hurts us, we should confront them. If we're misunderstood, we should speak louder, clearer, better. Silence in this mindset looks like surrender. But there is a deeper kind of silence, one that doesn't come from fear but from self-rest. This silence doesn't mean you have nothing to say. It means you finally understand that not everything needs to be said to everyone. Clarity doesn't always arrive through conversation. Sometimes it arrives through absence, through the moment you stop reacting and start observing, through the space where you no longer rush to defend your intentions or narrate your pain. When you step into silence, something uncomfortable happens. Because at first, your mind wants to fill the gap. You want to correct assumptions. You want to explain your side. You want to make sure you're not being misread. The silence feels like leaving the story unfinished, but unfinished stories are powerful. They reveal who people are when you stop guiding the narrative. When you go quiet, people show you their expectations. Some lean closer with respect. Some grow impatient. Some become angry. Some lose interest entirely. None of these reactions require your intervention. They are information. They are information. Silence removes the emotional noise that keeps you confused. When you're constantly responding, explaining, defending, you're too close to the situation to see it clearly. Silence gives you distance, and distance gives you truth. You begin to notice patterns. Who only reaches out when they need something? Who respects your pause? Who demands access to your emotions? These realizations don't come from confrontation. They come from quiet. Silence also protects your energy. Words are powerful, but they are expensive. Every explanation costs something. Every emotional response requires effort. When you give your words to people who are not listening, you drain yourself trying to be understood in spaces that were never safe for your honesty. Choosing silence is choosing discernment. It's saying, I will speak where my words are received, not where they are used against me. There's a strength in not reacting immediately, in letting emotions settle before responding, in allowing yourself to feel without performing those feelings for others. Silence gives you time to process, not just react. And here's what's surprising. Silence often speaks louder than words ever could. When you stop explaining why this works instantly, people notice. When you stop reacting, dynamics shift. When you stop engaging in emotional tug of war, the game ends. Not because you won, but because you walked away. This kind of silence isn't passive. It's intentional. It says, I see what's happening. I don't need to prove my worth. I trust myself enough to pause. Silence doesn't mean you avoid difficult conversations forever. It means you stop having them with people who don't have the capacity to hear you. It means you save your truth for relationships that are built on respect, not resistance. There's also clarity in the silence you give yourself. When you stop filling every quiet moment with noise, opinions, advice, distractions, you begin to hear your own voice again, the one that's been drowned out by expectations and external pressure. In silence, your intuition gets louder. In silence, your body relaxes. In silence, you recognize what feels aligned and what feels forced. You realize that you don't miss people. You miss who you were trying to be for them. You realize that peace isn't boring. It's stable. You realize that not everything needs closure to be complete. Some people will interpret your silence as distance. Let them. Some will call it cold. Let them. Silence is not your job to explain because clarity doesn't beg. Clarity doesn't chase. Clarity doesn't argue. It stands still. And from that stillness, you gain something rare, the ability to choose your next move with intention instead of emotion. Silence teaches you that you don't have to attend every argument you're invited to, that you don't have to respond to every misunderstanding, that your worth isn't measured by how loudly you defend yourself. When you learn to use silence this way, toxic dynamics lose their power. They rely on reaction, chaos, and emotional access. Silence removes all three. What remains is truth, clear, steady, and undeniable. Your energy returns to you because you're no longer managing other people's reactions. Consistency simplifies your life. You know what you'll do when a boundary is crossed. You know what access you'll remove. You know when to step back. There's peace in that clarity. And here's the quiet truth. People who are capable of healthy relationships adapt to consistency. They learn. They adjust. They respect you more, not less. The ones who can't adapt were never responding to your words anyway. They were responding to your flexibility. Consistency reveals this without you having to prove anything. You don't need to convince. You don't need to threaten consequences. You don't need to explain again. You just live the boundary, and in doing so, you stop centering your life around fixing, managing, or correcting others. You center it around honoring yourself. That's why consistency matters more than confrontation, because confrontation is something you do once. Consistency is something you become. We are taught in quiet and obvious ways that strength means holding on to people, holding on to relationships, holding on to explanations, hopes, memories, and versions of the future we once imagined. We praise persistence, loyalty, endurance. We rarely talk about the kind using this at work without conflict of strength that takes to release something that is hurting us, especially when we've invested time, love, or identity into it. Letting go is often mistaken for giving up, but giving up comes from despair. Letting go comes from clarity. It begins when you recognize that staying is costing you more than leaving ever could. When you notice how much energy it takes to keep explaining, fixing, forgiving, and minimizing your own pain. When you realize that you're not afraid of losing the person, you're afraid of facing the emptiness that might follow. That fear is real. Letting go creates space, and space can feel terrifying when you're used to noise, tension, and emotional chaos. Even unhealthy connections give us something familiar to hold on to. They give us a role, a sense of purpose, a story that explains who we are. So when you let go, you don't just release a person or a situation. You release an identity, the fixer, the understanding one, the strong one who stayed too long. That's why it takes courage. Courage is not loud. It doesn't always look confident. And sometimes courage looks like sitting alone with your feelings instead of running back to what's familiar. It looks like resisting the urge to reach out, explain one more time, or reopen a door you worked hard to close. Letting go asks you to grieve not just the person, but the hope, the potential that the version of the relationship you kept believing might exist someday. Grief is heavy, and many people avoid it by staying in pain they already know. But grief is honest, and honesty is the beginning of healing. Weakness avoids pain by staying stuck. Courage walks through it. When you let go, your mind will try to convince you that you're being cruel, dramatic, or selfish. You'll remember the good moments. You'll question your decision. You'll wonder if you should have tried harder, waited longer, been more patient. This doesn't mean letting go was wrong. It means you're human. Courage doesn't remove doubt. It moves forward despite it. There is also a quiet dignity in letting go without needing the other person to understand or agree. You don't need permission to protect your well-being. You don't need someone else's acknowledgement for your pain to be real. Letting go is not about punishment or revenge. It's about choosing not to continue a pattern that common fears that stop people diminishes you. And sometimes letting go is the most compassionate choice for everyone involved. It ends cycles that conversations couldn't fix. It stops resentment from turning into bitterness. It allows both people to face the truth without forcing change that isn't ready to happen. Letting go doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop sacrificing yourself to prove that you do. There's a moment after letting go that feels unsettling. The noise quiets, the drama fades, and you're left with yourself. This is where many people panic and return to what they left, not because it was healthy, but because it filled the silence. But if you stay, if you allow the quiet to exist, something remarkable happens. You begin to feel lighter. Not immediately, not dramatically, but steadily. You notice how much emotional space you've reclaimed, how much calmer your body feels, how your thoughts become clearer without constant conflict clouding them. You begin to trust yourself again. Letting go teaches you that you can survive loss, that you are not defined by who stays, that your worth does not depend on how much you endure. These lessons don't come from holding on, they come from release. And here's the truth most people don't say out loud. Some connections don't end because they lack love. They end because they lack safety, respect, or reciprocity. Letting go in these moments isn't a failure of love. It's a commitment to self-respect. Courage is choosing alignment over attachment. Courage is choosing peace over familiarity. Courage is choosing yourself. Even when your hands are shaking, when you finally let go, you don't become empty. You become available. Available for healthier connections, available for growth, available for a version of life that doesn't require constant emotional survival. Letting go is not the end of your story. It's the moment you stop living someone else's expectations and start honoring your own. We like the idea of peace as something we arrive at, something we achieve after setting a how to stay calm and unbothered boundary, having a hard conversation or walking away from the right situation. We imagine a moment where everything finally settles, where the noise stops, where we can rest and never have to defend ourselves again. But peace doesn't work like that. Peace is not a destination. It's a commitment you make again and again, often in small and unremarkable moments that no one else sees. Protecting your peace means noticing what drains you before it destroys you. It means paying attention to the subtle signals your body gives you, the tightness, the fatigue, the irritability long before things explode. Peace asks for awareness first because you can't protect what you refuse to acknowledge. This is daily work because life doesn't stop testing your limits. People don't suddenly become respectful just because you decided to value yourself. Old dynamics resurface. Familiar patterns try to pull you back in. Your own habits, people-pleasing, over-explaining, staying quiet to avoid discomfort, don't disappear overnight. They resurface under stress. Protecting your peace means choosing differently anyway. It looks like pausing before responding instead of reacting. It looks like saying no on an ordinary day, not just during a crisis. It looks like leaving conversations that feel heavy instead of staying to prove a point. These choices don't feel dramatic. They feel inconvenient, and that's why they matter. Peace is often threatened not by big betrayals, but by small compromises you make every day. The extra explanation you didn't need to give. The emotional labor you offered out of guilt. The boundary you softened because you didn't want to disappoint someone. Each small compromise seems harmless. But over time, they accumulate, and eventually you wake up feeling resentful, exhausted, and disconnected from yourself. Daily peace requires daily honesty. Honesty about what you can handle. Honesty about what you don't want anymore. Honesty about who feels safe and who doesn't. This honesty can be uncomfortable because it removes the option to pretend. You can't unknow what final mindset shift for inner power drains you once you see it clearly. Protecting your peace means accepting that clarity will sometimes cost you convenience, approval, or closeness. There will be days when protecting your peace feels selfish, when you question whether you're doing enough for others, when you wonder if you've become too guarded or distant. This is often the voice of old conditioning, the belief that your value comes from availability and sacrifice. But peace isn't about shutting people out. It's about letting the right things in. It's about creating space for rest, joy, and emotional safety. It's about choosing environments where you don't have to be on edge explaining yourself or bracing for the next conflict. That kind of space doesn't happen accidentally. It happens through repetition. Daily practice also means forgiving yourself when you slip. When you engage longer than you wanted to say yes and later regret it, when you reopen a door you meant to close. Peace isn't fragile. It doesn't disappear because you made a mistake. What matters is that you return to yourself instead of punishing yourself. Returning is part of the practice. Protecting your peace also means understanding that not every feeling deserves immediate action. Sometimes peace is maintained by doing less, Less reacting, less defending, less fixing. Silence, distance, and rest are not avoidance when they come from self-awareness. They are regulation. You begin to ask different questions. Not how do I fix this, but is this mine to carry? Not how I make them understand, but why do I need them to? These questions shift your energy back to where it belongs. Final message and takeaway over time. Daily peace changes you. You become more grounded, less reactive, more selective with your time and emotions. You stop chasing closure and start trusting your inner sense of alignment. You learn that peace doesn't mean life is easy. It means you are no longer at war with yourself. And here's the quiet truth. Protecting your peace will sometimes disappoint people. It will disrupt expectations. It will expose who benefited from your exhaustion. This doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. It means you're doing something honest. Peace.